Hello, everybody. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. Now, boldface questions are one of those question types which are often neglected. We find students paying a lot of attention to strengthen questions, to weaken, to assumption, even inference questions, but somehow boldface questions are, often neglected. Thinking that okay, they do not occur as frequently. Similarly, paradox questions kind of somewhere exist on the fringe, and if you are one of those people who are struggling with boldface questions and paradox questions because you haven't really been practicing much of it, or you have been going about it the wrong way, this is the right place to be. Today we are going to talk about how to solve these boldface questions most effectively, how to solve these paradox questions most effectively, so that in the exam, if you are faced with these questions, you can solve them in a jiffy. All right. One of the things that students forget, for example, is that the way you read the stimulus of the other question types, let's say for the strengthened questions or weakened questions, for boldface questions, you have to read the stimulus a little differently. And I'm going to talk about that today. All right. So we're going to talk about those very essential steps, all right, that you need to take in order to get the boldface questions and the paradox questions correct. So I'm going to discuss what's boldface. I'm going to discuss what's a paradox question. Stay with me and let's get going. So once again, a very warm welcome to all of you to this webinar on boldface and paradox questions. I'm Sunita. I'll be your host for the entire evening. I've got tons of experience and I love teaching. You will realize that I have very simple solutions for not so simple problems. What are we going to do today? Well, let's quickly set the agenda. So, as already promised, I'm going to talk about how to analyze the boldface stimulus, such that you get the most effective results. And then using that analysis, how to analyze the answer choices of the boldface questions. It is often that students say that the answer choices of the boldface questions are really very couched in abstract terms. Okay, there are students who tell me during my private tutoring sessions that okay, I'm able to understand the paragraph, but I'm not able to decipher or decode the answer choices on the boldface questions. So we're going to talk about that, and through all of this, we're going to solve some really hard boldface and paradox questions. So are you with me? Let's get started. All right. Um, so as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about the boldface questions, the concept itself. Just hold on to it. Those of you who are already familiar with it, just bear with me. I'm not going to spend too much of time on that. In fact, I have a different take on how to understand these boldface questions. But before that, in general, the correct approach to any CR question is, proper attention to be given to the analysis of the stimulus. This is where a lot of us falter. So I'm going to talk about how to analyze the boldface stimulus properly. Pre-thinking definitely gives you the edge, is that you are kind of yourself the boldface questions. What are the things that you can do? And finally, how to eliminate the incorrect answer choice. So then we deal at length with all these concepts. All right. But today, let me talk to you about the boldface question. Just give me a moment. Hold on a second, guys. 1 second. It seems a slide which I wanted to show has somehow hidden itself. Okay, here goes. Now, do listen to me carefully. Okay, I'm just going to put this on the bigger screen here. Yep. So let's understand, first of all, a couple of things about the boldface questions. What are the basic roles that you can expect on any boldface question? Okay, very, very important. Now, this is also going to help you understand a lot of things about your RC, sentences or sentences on any of the other stimulus. So pay attention. Think about any given sentence. There are two aspects to any given sentence: the nature of that sentence, the role of that sentence. Okay. Now, what do we mean by nature? That statement could either be a fact or it could be an opinion. Correct? And these are the two aspects of any given sentence that we should think about when we are reading the sentences on the boldface questions. All right, think a little bit about, okay, is this statement a fact or is this statement an opinion? Why do I need to think about that? Well, the boldface questions ask you to identify the roles of the highlighted or the boldface portions, right? Now, if that boldface is a fact, there are only two roles that that particular statement can really play. Either it will act as a premise if it is supporting the main conclusion, or if it is going against the main conclusion, it will be the counter premise. So these are the only two possible roles that a factual statement can play. On the other hand, if we have an opinion, that opinion could play the role of an intermediate conclusion, what we call IC, or the main conclusion. Now, when we talk about an opinion, it can be broadly classified into two categories. One, the third party's opinion, okay, and the other, the author's opinion. Now, the third party opinion itself will always be an intermediate conclusion, and depending on whether it supports the main conclusion or goes against it, it will again boil down to whether it's playing the role of a premise or a counter premise. Okay. Similarly, the author's opinion can also play the role of a premise or a counter premise. But it is always the author's opinion which will always play the role of the main conclusion. So these are the basic roles. Do let me know in the chat box, guys, if this is clear to all of you. Please let me know in the chat box if this is clear to you. And I hope, and this is a very, very important aspect of bold face questions, all right? In fact, it is a very important aspect for analyzing any sentence. So do let me know in the chat box if this is clear. Are you with me so far? I would love to listen to your comments. Yes, is it clear to all of you? Okay. All right, I can see a lot of you here. So I hope so far whatever I have discussed with you is clear. Let's now put all of this into practice. All right. So here is the first question of the evening, first boldface question that I want you to solve. All right. I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes for this. Now, why 2.5 minutes? Boldface questions per se, all right, have usually they have lengthier stimulus, all right, and it will take you time to read that. All right. So I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes here. Get started. While you solve this, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to kind of also stop the camera. So get going. There's a request, guys. Do not put in your answer choices until I request you to do so, so that everybody gets a fair chance to solve this question. All right. So hold on to your questions, please. Those of you who've just joined us, we are solving some really hard boldface questions. We're going to look at the process to be used to solve this question. 1 minute left. All right, you can start putting in your answers. So I can already see Shweta has put in her choice, option D. You can also tell me what, if at all, you faced any issues. So I have Pavan saying it's B, Stalin saying it's E. Okay, variety here. So D, B, E. And do share what are the issues you faced with this question, if you faced any issues, so that we can look at what to do. I'm going to show you the process, don't worry. Can we have some more answers? Okay, while you're sharing your answers, let me get started with the process because we want to make the most of the session. All right, here goes. Now, as already discussed with you, thank you, Sarita. As already discussed with you, when you read a sentence, initial round of reading, all you can do is you can decide whether a statement is a fact or an opinion. If it's an opinion, whose opinion? Okay, whether anything is any statement is a premise, counter premise, or main conclusion or intermediate conclusion, you can only decide on these roles once you have read the full paragraph. All right, so this is a 700 plus level question, Shweta. All the questions in today's session are 700 plus level questions. All right, so let me get started with this process. All right, here goes. Now, when I read this sentence, this is the first statement. Aroka city currently funds. So we have simple present tense. It's public schools through taxes on property. All right, we are talking about something that's happening now, so that's a fact. Even the next statement, in place of this system, the city plans to introduce a sales tax of 3% on all retail sales. So basically, all of this I know is a fact. It's not anyone's personal opinion, neither the author's nor anybody else's. All right, so I can call it an observation, I can call it a fact, I can call it a situation, I can call it a circumstance. Let's read the next sentence. Critics protest. Okay, so this here is going to be a third party's opinion, right? What is the third party saying? That 3% of current retail sales, that means this 3% of current retail sales, falls short of the amount raised for schools by property tax. So the critics are against this plan. They are pointing out a drawback of the plan. They are, projecting an opposition to the plan. Now, sentences like these, where only part of the sentence is in boldface, you need to analyze that part separately. For example, this entire sentence is a third party conclusion. However, only the boldface, if I only look at the boldface, this is a fact. All right, 3% currently falls fact. How do we know that? It's using simple present tense for one thing. Secondly, is it something that you can falsify if you're stating it as a fact? All right, so the critics are using this as a fact to go against the plan. Fair enough. Notice how I'm just staying with fact and opinion kind of thing. The critics are correct on this point. Now, who is calling out the critics as correct on this point? This is clearly the author's opinion, and the author is agreeing with this point. What is this point? This point. But is the author also agreeing with the protest? Right now, we don't know. Let's read the next statement. Nevertheless, nevertheless means despite the critics' being correct on this point. Despite that, implementing the plan will probably what? Is it a fact? No, this is an opinion. Whose opinion? The author's opinion. And the author is against the critics' protest, although the author concedes one particular point. All right. And then when we read the next bunch of statements, okay, several large retailers have already selected Aroka City as the site for huge new stores, and these are certain to draw large numbers of shoppers from the neighboring municipalities where the tax rates are high. All this the author is offering to point out some facts. And why are these facts being given? The author concludes based on these facts that the retail sales in Aroka City are bound to increase in future. Why it's bound to increase? There are new stores opening up. We are going to draw a large number of shoppers, and therefore the retail sales will increase. All right. Now, if the retail sales increases, then what? If the retail sales increases, then the tax on the retail sales will also, the amount will also increase. So here is an again we have the author's opinion. Now notice I have basically outlined these sentences as fact or conclusion or opinion, okay, and whose opinion. Look at this. Now once I have done this, what is the next step? The next step is to identify, out of all the opinions, do I have a main conclusion here? Now the main conclusion can always be only in the author's words. So this is one, this is another, and this is here. So statements 3, 4, and 6. Can any of you tell me which of these three statements is the main conclusion? Go ahead. Which of these three statements is the main conclusion? Because without deciding the main conclusion, we cannot decide the roles of the other sentences or the boldfaces. So what is the main conclusion of these three sentences? Go ahead. I'm also going to talk about the technique to identify the main conclusion, but let's hear from you first. Arpit says the fourth statement is the main conclusion. Okay, Arpit, I've got that. There are so many of you watching this webinar. Would love your interaction, would love you to offer your responses here. That is something that encourages me to go ahead also. Stalin also says it's the fourth statement. Okay, let's examine. Now, we know that this is too small to be the main idea, right? Because right after that, the author is saying nevertheless. So if you really look at all these two statements, I'm just going to use the eraser to clear up some of these. Okay. If you really consider, so we are considering this statement and this, which of these two is the main conclusion. So if you can try the since X therefore Y test. All right. So you can apply since here. So since implementing the plan will not reduce the money, that is why the retail sales are bound to increase? No. All right. So this is not working. The since with the fourth statement is not working. All right. Let's apply since to the sixth statement. Let's say since retail sales are bound to increase, therefore implementing the plan will not reduce the money going to Aroka schools. This makes sense. So the statement with the since, that means statement 6, becomes the premise, and statement 4 is the main conclusion. All right. Draw the main conclusion, which is statement 4. So now I know that statement 4 is the main conclusion. If statement 4 is the main conclusion, then all the sentences supporting the main conclusion will be called a premise. So statement 5 and statement 6 perform the function of a premise. That means your second boldface is functioning as a premise for the main conclusion. And these two statements here are functioning as the counter premise because they are going against the main conclusion. So when we are pre-thinking, what we are given to understand is the first boldface is acting as a counter premise, and the second boldface is acting as the premise. The two are going in the opposite direction. One is against the main conclusion, the other is in favor of the main conclusion. And what is the main conclusion? This statement here is the main conclusion. So this is the pre-thinking. Now, once you have done this, identifying the correct option will become easy. Is the process clear? Do let me know if the process is clear, everybody. We are going to put this process into practice in the next couple of questions as well, so don't worry. Okay. All right, great. Thank you, Shweta, for that affirmation. Now, keeping our analysis in mind, and what was that analysis? The first boldface was a fact which was acting as a counter premise to this main conclusion here. Okay. And the second boldface was playing the role of the premise which was supporting that main conclusion. Now, I promised you that I would show you how to tackle the answer choices on the boldface questions. Oftentimes, I've had students just reading the sentence from end to end in one shot and then going back and rereading it a couple of times. You're just confusing your brain by reading any given sentence multiple times. Read it once, read it slow, break down and read it. For example, the first is a criticism of a funding plan. Is the first boldface a criticism of a funding plan? Yes, this part is correct. And sustained by the argument. Now, does the argument, now argument means the main conclusion or the author. Does the author sustain the criticism itself? No. The author only concedes a simple point saying that the critics are correct about the fact, but the author does not agree with the criticism itself. And of course, if you're not convinced, the second is the argument's conclusion. This is enough to help you rule out option A. So option A is incorrect. All right. Nobody marked option A as the correct answer. So that's all good. Let me remove this. So option A majorly is incorrect because of two portions. Sustained is wrong and main conclusion is wrong. Okay, let's read B. The first is a criticism. It is a criticism. It's part of a criticism. So let's call it that. Yes. The evidence behind which, now let me stop here. So we are saying the evidence behind this criticism. Now the criticism is saying 3% of current retail sales falls short. Okay. What is the evidence for this? This part is the evidence. Okay. Look at this part. This is supporting this, right? This is the evidence behind the criticism. So this part is, we do have evidence behind it. It is not disputed by the argument. Absolutely. That evidence is not disputed. The author says it's correct. The second is the position the argument seeks to establish. Now, this term, position that the argument seeks to establish, is a term we use only for the main conclusion. So, is the second the main conclusion? No. Therefore, B is also not the correct answer. Let's go to C. The first is a criticism of a funding plan. Yes, it is a criticism. It is a criticism of a plan. It is the criticism itself is not supported by the argument. So I'm just going to rule out C. I don't even need to proceed further. The first is a claim. Now, the first is a fact, right? Remember, this was a fact which was being used as a counter premise by the critics, right? Can I call a fact a claim? No. I can only call an opinion a claim. All right. So I can kind of rule out D here itself. And if in the exam you're just left with E, please mark that, mark it for review and proceed. I'm just going to analyze E as well. The first is an objection. Okay, let me just clear the screen a bit because I want to mark here as well. Okay. Yeah. So let's analyze. The first is an, let me stop here. Is it an objection? Well, it is a part of the criticism or objection, so I can call it an objection. The evidence for which, again, this sentence is supporting this, so the sentence absolutely the author is calling it correct, so the evidence is being sustained. The second is a prediction. Let's stop and ask ourselves, is this a prediction? Well, we are saying are bound to increase in future, so I can call it a prediction. That, if accurate, undermines, that means weakens the force of that objection. So this is weakening the force of this objection. Yes, the two are in the opposite direction, one is going against the other, and therefore this part is also correct. So E is the correct answer. So Siddharth is saying sustained by the argument. Okay, Siddharth. uh, the first choice says the criticism is sustained by the argument. Now, is the when we say the argument, we are referring to the main conclusion. We are referring to the author's main idea. So, is the main idea supporting the first criticism? No, and therefore it is incorrect. The criticism itself is not sustained by the argument. All right. The fact offered as part of the criticism is sustained. So, guys, I hope that was clear, Siddharth. I'm going to take you to the next question, but just before that, let me quickly share two links with you. At GMATWhiz, we teach this process in more detail, and you can, if you want a closer look at the free trial version of the course, I'm just quickly sharing the link. Those of you who are stuck in your prep, either you are a fresher but don't know how to go about it, or you're a retaker and your scores have plateaued, you don't know what is wrong with your preparation, what you've tried everything and things are not working out. I'm going to share another link with you. This link is the link to set up a free call with our strategy experts. All right, you can assign a free call, and you can talk to our experts who will help you out. So right now on the screen, I'm sharing the link to set up the free call. All right. Um, so Siddharth says 2 minutes. You want to understand how to do this in 2 minutes. I'm unable to apply the techniques in difficult questions and get to the right answer. As this one, it will take you 2.5 to 3 minutes. All right. Each one of us has a different speed, way of reading. At GMATWhiz, we encourage you to break down sentences and read such that you don't have to reread. So the rereading time is saved. Also, if you're breaking down the options bit by bit, sometimes you can eliminate the option even without reading the full sentence. For example, look at option D. I can eliminate it just by reading that the first is a claim. It's not a claim. I can eliminate just by reading the first is a criticism, which is endorsed by the argument. The criticism is not endorsed by the argument. All right. So you can solve, I mean, a standard boldface question takes easily 2.5 minutes. It can take you up to 3 minutes, and don't worry about that. Hard questions are meant to be given some respect and time. The compensation will come with some easier questions interspersed here and there. All right. So don't worry too much about that, Siddharth. And again, how to do this in 2.5 minutes also? You need to practice the right approach. Every time you solve a bold question, follow the right approach. Resist the temptation to just solve any which how. All right. Okay. So let me bring up the next question of the evening. But just before that, the most common mistake that we make on the answer choice elimination is we choose an option saying it's an out of scope answer choice. So make sure that you have defined your scope, you have done your pre-thinking for the boldface questions clearly before you proceed to the next, the answer choices. And at GMATWhiz, we teach you how to look at different questions. What are the what are the main things that you need to look at in a certain question type. Here's the next question of the evening, and I'm going to mute myself. Let me just Let me give you 3 minutes for this question. There are 3 questions in this question. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer. I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this question. Your 3 minutes start now. Focus on the process rather than focusing on the time. And the other thing is, please hold on to your answers. I'll tell you when to post your answers, okay? One more minute. All right. 3 minutes are up. You can start posting your answers. Looking forward to your response, guys. Thank you, Arpit. Yes. Can I have a few more answers? So, Arpit, Stalin, Pavan, Shubhiksha, everybody says it's C. Anyone else? Okay, good to go. Thank you so much for your response. But C is not the answer, guys. So, all of you have got it wrong. Why? Let's discover. So, I'm going to start my explanation. All right. Focus on the explanation, guys, okay? I'll go slower. First sentence, plant scientists have used genetic engineering on seeds to produce crop plants that are highly resistant to insect damage. The entire thing has already taken place. This is telling us that there is a situation that we have here. This is a fact. No problem. Right now, I don't know whether this fact is going to act as a premise or a counter premise. All right. So I'm just going to call it a fact and move to the next statement. Unfortunately, now who finds it unfortunate? Obviously, the author. The seeds themselves are quite expensive. These genetically engineered seeds are quite expensive, and plants require more fertilizer and water to grow well than normal ones. So, as a result of now this itself is a fact. We are using simple present tense all here. So one fact has led to another fact, and the second fact the author is stating as a disadvantage of the use of these genetically engineered seeds. They're going to be more expensive, all right? Thus, that means because of this fact, the author is coming to a conclusion. Thus, for most farmers, the savings on pesticides, that means if they are using the genetically engineered seeds, they won't need pesticides. So the savings on pesticides would not compensate for the higher seed cost and the cost of additional fertilizer. So here we have the author's opinion, and the author's opinion is based on statement 2, which is a fact. All right. So far, the entire paragraph is going in one direction only. And the direction is that these genetically engineered seeds are not really going to be of much use. However, okay, we see a shift. And this portion of the sentence begins with a since. Now, at GMATWhiz, we give you some trigger words that tell you whether a statement is a fact or not. Since, because, these are two triggers, all right, which always bring forth what we call a fact, all right. So, consumer demand for grains, fruits, and vegetables grown without the use of pesticides continues to rise. So, this is a fact. And the author is giving this fact to prove something in the opposite direction of whatever the author has concluded earlier. And the author goes on to say the use of genetically engineered seeds of this kind is likely to become widespread, which is the author's opinion. All right. So we have author's opinion here. We have the author's opinion here. No rocket science here to realize that the ultimate opinion, the main conclusion, is the last one. This is what the author wants to prove, despite whatever drawbacks the genetically engineered seeds have. This is the main conclusion. If this is the main conclusion, then all the sentences supporting the main conclusion will be called a premise. So the second boldface is a premise, okay, supporting the main conclusion. And the first boldface is a counter premise because it is pointing out a negative side of the genetically engineered seeds. So if we pre-think, okay, the first boldface is a counter premise to the main conclusion. And the main conclusion is this portion here is a premise for the main conclusion. Okay, the two bold faces are going in the opposite direction, and neither of the two bold faces is the main conclusion. Clear? Now, with this understanding, and if you want in the exam, you can just write this down on paper so that you can look at it every time you go through an option. Okay, let's go through option A. The first supplies a context for the argument. Remember, this is not just a context, it is actually a counter premise. So to call it a context is, really very, it's not the right way to refer to it. It's not merely a context. The second is the argument's main conclusion. Absolutely not. So A is out, and but none of you have marked A. First introduces a development. Now let's stop here. Can I call the first boldface a development? Well, it is a development that has taken place because of genetic engineering. Something has developed. The seeds have developed into expensive seeds. The seeds have developed into seeds that will need more fertilizer and more water. So I can call it a development tick. That the argument predicts will have a certain outcome. Okay. Which outcome? So this is going to lead to this outcome, right? The thus is there. So this part is also correct. I'm so sorry. I'm being a little sloppy here. Let me clear that up. So yeah. So yes, this is also correct. Notice how I'm just reading a portion once. I'm not rereading it again, and that is how you save time. The second is a state of affairs. Can I call it a state of affairs? In day-to-day language, what is the state of affairs? It's the situation at hand. So yes, consumer demand is going up. We can call it a state of affairs. So this part of B is also correct. That the argument denies will be part of that outcome. So is the argument saying that this will not be a part of this? No. This is the part. So this last portion of B is incorrect. The author is saying that consumer demand continues to rise, but at the same time, the farmers are actually not going to save any money by using these seeds. So both the things will happen at the same time. It's not that one will happen and the other won't. So B is out. Now C, the favorite. We've already established that these two parts are correct. So I'm not going to go into this again. You also in the exam don't go through that again. Second, acknowledges a consideration. Now, what is the word consideration refer to? Consideration refers to a reasoning, okay, a thought, an idea. Can I call the second boldface reasoning? Yes. The second boldface is the premise behind the conclusion. So definitely it's that prediction. Ask yourself, is this going against this prediction? No. The two are not going against each other. Since consumer demand continues to rise, is not negating the idea that farmers won't make any savings. Okay? So C is out. Let's go to D. Let me clear up the screen a bit. Okay, come. Let's stop there. Can I call this an outcome? Well, it is the result of using genetic engineering on seeds. So I can call it an outcome. That the argument seeks to weigh against. Argument, I already told you, refers to the author's main idea, or in this case, the main conclusion. Is the main conclusion going against the first boldface? Yes, this is a counter premise. This is the main conclusion. Therefore, the first boldface is something definitely that the argument is going against. The second is a consideration. Yes, we've already established it's a consideration supporting that which the argument seeks to establish. Argument seeks to establish is called the main conclusion. So yes, the second boldface is correct. You hold on to D. Let's go to E. The first and second each provide evidence. Can we call each of them evidence? Well, a counter premise or a premise, they are facts. In this case, both are facts. So they are providing evidence. One is providing evidence against the main conclusion, one is providing evidence for the main conclusion. So far, so good. But support the argument's main conclusion? No, both are not supporting the argument's main conclusion, and therefore the correct answer is D. I hope this is clear to all of you. Yes? So, Arpit, Stalin, Pavan, Subiksha, I hope that the process was also clear to you and the reasoning was also clear to you. Why um, those questions, the other option, C was incorrect. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you. Here's the last boldface question. After this, we're going to dive into paradox, the world of paradox. So, see, again, I'm saying get hold of the recording of this lesson, go through it once more, jot down the process, and every time you practice a boldface question, follow this process. Trust me, I have had many of my students improve their CR by following our processes word for word. All right, so let me mute myself. 3 minutes again. Get started. All right. So 3 minutes up. Let's have some of your answers, please. Kanav, I have responded to your query about a counter premise. In general, a counter premise is any statement which is going against the main conclusion. In the previous question, the first boldface was stating a disadvantage or drawback of the genetically engineered seeds. And that was going against the main conclusion, which was saying that the genetically engineered seeds will be used more and more. So the first boldface was acting as a counter premise. Do go through the beginning part of this webinar. I have discussed the counter premise in detail, and that will help you, I'm sure. Yes, can we have some answers, guys? I don't have any answers forthcoming. It would be wonderful to have your responses. And those of you watching live, do hit the like button if you are enjoying the webinar so far. Okay, Siddharth, thank you for responding. So Siddharth has tentatively put A. Yes, any more responses? Kanav says B. Okay. Even I don't remember the answer. I'm just going to go through it and solve with you guys. All right, so I have A and B as the contenders. Let's start. And post this, we're going to start with paradox questions. Okay, I've got 2 paradox questions and hope you'll enjoy them as well. Shweta says it's D. So A, B, D. Okay, that's a lot of variety. And Anshu also says it's B. Okay, let's get started. As usual, the first sentence, in countries where automobile insurance includes compensation for whiplash injuries sustained in automobile accidents. So this part is talking about particular countries where you have compensation for certain injuries. Reports of having suffered such injuries are twice as frequent. If you look at the entire sentence, the crux of the sentence is reports are twice as frequent. So all of it is a fact, pure and simple. The author is giving us a fact about certain reports where they are frequent. Why is this fact given to us? We don't know yet. So bear with me. Next sentence. Some commentators have argued. So clearly, this part is going to present us with a third party opinion. But let's read on. Some commentators have argued correctly. So the author agrees with the commentator's argument, which is going to be presented now. That since, now notice this part of the sentence begins with a since there is presently no objective test for whiplash. So I've already mentioned in the earlier question, any statement beginning with since, any portion of the statement beginning with since or because, it's a premise. So this is a fact. The part in the boldface is a fact. The commentator's argument has yet not been mentioned. The commentator is using this fact to present the next part, which is the third party opinion. So the commentators have argued that because there is no objective test for whiplash, spurious means false reports of whiplash injuries cannot be readily identified. So based on the fact that there is no test, the commentators say that you cannot identify false reports, and the author agrees with this. So far we don't have any opposite direction in the passage. Okay, let's go to the next one. These commentators are, however, so we have our however introduced here, wrong to draw the further conclusion. Okay, so this conclusion the author agrees with, this conclusion, but there is a further conclusion which is going to come up which the author disagrees with. And that conclusion is whose conclusion? The commentator's conclusion. So this part is the commentator's conclusion, and the author does not, so this part, the commentators are wrong. This portion is the author's opinion. Okay. And what is the author saying? What is wrong? The next part is the third party opinion, which the author is calling out as wrong. And if I go to the next statement, clearly in countries where automobile insurance does not include compensation for whiplash, people often have this little incentive to report whiplash. So the author is offering another opinion to tell us why the author disagrees with the commentators. The author is offering an explanation why the author disagrees with the comments. All right. So here the main conclusion is commentators are wrong. Why are the commentators wrong? This is the premise. The author is providing another intermediate conclusion, telling us why the commentators are wrong. All right. But look at the two bold faces. What are they doing? Because it is the bold face that we have to identify the role of. Now, the first one is clearly, if there is no objective test for whiplash, is it going in favor of the main conclusion or against it? Well, it's going against the main conclusion. Okay, so it's the counter premise. First bold face is a counter premise because it is not really in favor of the main conclusion. All right. The second bold face is also a counter premise, the third party opinion, because it is also going against the main conclusion. So if I really, let me clear this up a little bit, all of this. In conclusion, the author, what does the main point? The author wants to tell us that the commentators are wrong. So this is the main conclusion. Okay. Whichever statements support this are going to be counted as a premise. So this, where the author says, you know, people don't have the incentive to report, and that is why the commentators are wrong. It is acting as a premise. And if I look at the two bold faces, they are going against the main conclusion, so they are counter premise. This and this. All right. Let's take our pre-thinking. Let's kind of put our pre-thinking together. So the two bold faces are counter premises, right? This is a counter premise. This is also a counter premise. With that, let's go into the answer choice elimination. The first is evidence. Now, can we call the first boldface evidence? Well, it is being presented as evidence to support this conclusion, right? So it is evidence. That has been used for a conclusion? Yes. It has been used to supporting the commentators. First, there is no objective test for whiplash. That is why there is no way to identify the false reports. And that is why the commentators believe that half the reports are false. So the first bold face is supporting two conclusions actually. It is supporting the spurious reports conclusion. It is also supporting the second bold face. That the argument criticizes. Yes, the argument definitely criticizes this particular conclusion, right? So argument criticizes the second bold face, correct? The second is that conclusion which the argument criticizes. Yes, this is also correct. So A seems to be fine. Okay, A seems to be fine, and we'll hold on to A. The first is evidence that has been used to support a conclusion that the argument criticizes. This is all correct. The second is the position that the argument defends. Is the argument defending this? No, the author is calling it wrong. So this part is incorrect. The second is not being defended by the author. So B is incorrect. First is a claim. Can I call the fact no objective test for whiplash? Is that a claim? No, I can rule it out here itself. B is out. First is an intermediate conclusion. No, first is a fact. It's not a conclusion. Out. First out. Now, one of you, Siddharth, I think, was asking me about how to save time. This is how you save time. A is correct. All right. So, Siddharth, you did get it right. I hope you used the process and got it right. And the others who have gotten it wrong, do understand why you've gotten it wrong. You need to take the sentences bit by bit. All right, bit by bit. So I hope so far you're enjoying this webinar and you have some really good takeaways um, about the boldface. Next, we are going to deep dive into paradox. What is a paradox, guys? What is a paradox? Okay, let me just. So, well, to give you an example and explain what a paradox is, look at this statement. The more we drink water, the more thirsty we feel. It should be we feel, not I feel. The more we drink water, the more thirsty we feel. Okay. Now, that sounds contradictory, right? I mean, that is what we call a paradox, where two unexpected scenarios exist together. All right. And you are called upon to provide a logical explanation to show how these two contradictory or unexpected scenarios, all right, uh, uh, the R is missing here, guys. Sorry. All right, can actually exist together. So resolving a paradox means identifying a logical explanation to state how two contradictory things still make sense. For example, here there could be an explanation in such as that the more water we drink, our body adjusts to the quantity and demands more water. The body demands more water, and that would explain why we would feel more thirsty if we drink more water. Okay, so paradox. So how to resolve a paradox? Now, the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify what is paradoxical in the given stimulus and then keep that as your scope and go about finding an explanation for that. So here comes a question for you. Take a shot at it. No, Siddharth, don't worry. You just keep, see, I have been doing this. Siddharth says that it was not as detailed. Don't worry. During your practice, you try to focus on the approach. It will take you more time initially. First, maybe 5 or 10 days, it's going to take you about 4 minutes, 5 minutes. But with practice, you will become even better than, Siddharth, me. I have done tons of practice. This is something that I do day in and day out. So, no surprise that I can do it faster. But don't worry, you'll also get there. So here's the question. You guys have 3 minutes. Again, I'm going to give you 3 minutes. All right. I want you to try your approach here. And then we are going to look at the solution. Okay. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so yes, you can start putting in your answers. I already have some answers. Thank you. So Anshu, Shweta, both think it's A. Pavan thinks it's C. Okay, let's get started. Stalin also believes it's C. Siddharth, yeah. So I've got some answers as A and some believe it's C. Great. Thank you so much for your responses, everybody. Wonderful. Let's get started. So as stated already earlier, the first step is to identify the paradox. Okay. Let's get started. Clearbell telephone, so I'm going to call it CT, provides slow dialing service to customers for a low fee. So there is SD service, low fee, and fast dialing service to other customers. So FD is another service it offers who pay a somewhat higher fee. Okay, fee difference. So the nature is different and the fee is also different. Okay. However, FD technology, however. So I'm just going to write stuff here just for our own benefit. So we have Clearbell, okay, telephone CT. It provides two services. Okay, we are talking about the SD service. We're talking about the FD service, and the SD service is low fee and FD service is higher fee. Forget the handwriting, guys. Okay, forgive the handwriting. FD technology, however, is so efficient that it costs Clearbell substantially less per average call to provide than does SD. Okay, so SD cost of production. Okay, cost of production is high. FD cost of production is low, very low. Okay. So if I just look at the scenario so far, it seems FD is a profitable venture. The fees is also higher, cost of production is also lower. So it clearly seems that CT would be getting a higher revenue per call for FD than for SD. All right. Nonetheless, clearly this is where we are going to encounter the paradox. Accountants have calculated that Clearbell's profits would drop. Now, please keep in mind, drop of profit does not mean loss. It simply means whatever profit you were making earlier, you are now going to make a lower profit. If it provided FD to all its customers at low fee. Okay, so the scenario in the conclusion is Clearbell is going to provide FD to all customers. Okay, to all. That means even to the SD people. And it will provide it at the low fee. That means the low fee that was charged for SD, low fee. Okay. Now, if they expect a drop in revenue, I'm not saying drop in profit, okay? I'm talking about drop in revenue, total income. And because FD is less costly, it also means that there will be a drop in cost. Cost of production, we know, is also going to drop. Drop. SD was costlier. SD, the cost of production was high. Now they are providing FD in cost. That means if there is a drop in revenue, there is a drop in cost, the profit might have remained the same also. Why will the profit drop? That is the, if you look at the profitability equation, profit equals to revenue minus cost. correct? Now, in this scenario, cost is dropping, revenue is also dropping. So, in under what circumstances the profit will drop? The profit will drop if this drop is smaller, is bigger, and the revenue than cost, then the profit is also going to drop. All right. So we have to identify why profit will drop. Why can't it remain the same? Drop is bigger than the cost drop. Let me know if this is clear to all of you. Please let me know if this is clear to all of you so that I can proceed with the rest of the explanation. Again, I have worked it out on screen here. Some questions you might take, might start using pen and paper if you feel so inclined. You can do all of this in the head also, but there's no harm in every now and then using pen and paper. It is provided to you. So great. Thank you for that affirmation, Siddharth. Let's move ahead. So let's go to the answer choice elimination. All right. Uh, Now the question stem says, assume that installation costs for FD are insignificant. That means um, it's telling us there is no installation cost that you really need to consider if the customer already has an SD service. So I'm just shifting one customer, existing customer to a different service. So no new installation costs are involved and already the FD costs are low. So which one will explain why the profit is going to drop? A says the extra revenue collected from the customers who pay the high fee. So that means the extra revenue collected from FD customers when they were paying the high fee is higher. That means the revenue is higher than the cost of providing SD, which means if the revenue is dropping, the revenue drop is more than the cost drop. Okay. Cost would not reduce much, but revenue would reduce a lot because the revenue collected was anyways higher. And therefore, A is the correct option. All right. Now, I'll share a secret with you. When I first solved this question and when I read A, I wasn't able to get the entire meaning of A. And this is back when I was just starting off on GMAT. But the good thing that I did, and I would ask you also to do, is if you're not able to decipher, decode, or understand any choice, please don't eliminate it. Just keep it on hold. Sometimes it might happen so that you would be able to eliminate the other choices, and then whatever is left behind, even though you cannot justify it, is the correct answer. And that is what had happened with me with this particular question. So, anyways, A is the correct answer. Let's go to B. The low fee was increased 6% last year, whereas the higher fee was not increased. We don't care when the low fee was increased, when the high fee was increased, whether the high fee was increased or not, because we are going to bring everybody down to the current low fee rate. There won't be any fee differential at all. So B is out. It doesn't explain anything. A lot of you chose C, guys. Let's see why C is incorrect. Although 96% of the customers regard FD service as reliable. All right. So out of the 100 customers, 96 of them believe FD is good. And it is more convenient than SD. So we have lots of customers who would love to have FD. Fewer than 10% of them choose to pay the higher fee. That means they would choose FD because now they would get it at a lower fee. Does it explain, although, why there would be a drop in profit? It seems everybody would be agreeable to shifting to FD. Nobody would be leaving Clearbell. This actually indicates there might be, higher profits because cost is also going down and nobody is leaving Clearbell service. So C is not the answer. D, of course, we don't care what the company's competitors are providing. We are worried about why Clearbell's profits would drop. All right. This doesn't say, I mean, this choice is just saying that the competitors are also providing FD at low fee rates. It just means there is competition, but does not outrightly state if Purebell's customers would leave the company. So this is out. And E talks about profits fell eventually, but doesn't tell us why it fell. So this is absolutely out. I hope this is clear. So identifying the paradox will take you some time. Stalin and Shweta, great. In fact, process of elimination is something that you really need to work on. Instead of focusing on what is my correct answer, and that doesn't work all the time, focus on why something is incorrect. If you are eliminating something for a solid reason, high chances you're eliminating it right. All right. Don't eliminate something just by saying, I don't think this is the answer. I don't think this is the answer is no reasoning. You must have an exact reason. At GMATWhiz, we bucket these incorrect options. We call it, okay, this is a distortion, this is just half truth and distortion, this is generalization, this is exaggeration, this is something which is out of scope. And each of these have a way of, there is a way to identify each of these, and we focus on that. So focus on the elimination. All right, that brings us to the last question of the evening. I hope you enjoy this question because um, I would just give one quick tip. Solve this question again based on the process of elimination. Try that. So I'm going to mute myself while you give this a shot. All right. So, would love to see your responses. Kanav is asking how to solve these detailed questions in 2 minutes. Kanav, all CR questions cannot be solved in under 2 minutes. If you're going to try to do that, try to squeeze every question into that time frame, you will be doing injustice to those questions. Okay. So, some of these questions will take time, but then the compensation will come in the form of other questions where you can save time. All right. So, for these detailed questions, use pen and paper. This particular question, it would have taken me around 2.5 minutes to solve. I would have probably spent around 1 minute 45 seconds or so on the stimulus analysis, and 30% of the rest of the, I mean, the remaining time I would have spent on the answer choice elimination. The answer choices weren't really difficult to eliminate. Okay. So Stalin says B, Anshu says B, Siddharth says D, Shubhiksha says B. Okay, let's go ahead and understand this question. In the US, okay, we're talking about a particular country here, vacationers. Now, sometimes, no, these words have implications. For example, when you read the word vacationers, what should you infer? You should infer that we're talking about people who are going on a holiday, all right, who are on a holiday. Account for more than half. More than half means 51% or more of all visitors to what are technically called pure aquariums. Okay. So first part of this sentence is giving us some facts. It's telling us that vacationers form more than half of all the visitors to pure aquarium. But for fewer, so they account for fewer than 1/4 to all visitors to zoos, and the zoo includes a zoo aquarium. Do they visit the zoo aquarium? We don't know, but they definitely visit the zoo, and the zoo contains a zoo aquarium. So if I really simplify the facts, we are saying that pure aquariums, more than 50% are vacationers. By inference, that means less than half are locals or non-vacationers. Similarly, uh, at the zoos, less than 25% are vacationers. By inference, it means majority of the visitors to zoos are locals or non-vacationers. So basically, we have to identify why vacationers prefer the pure aquarium uh, to the zoos. All right, we have to identify what is the reason why more vacationers are intent on visiting the pure aquarium when they are on vacation. All right, we need to choose an answer that would resolve this discrepancy. Now here you can do a little bit of extrapolation. You can think that if you were a vacationer, what kind of places would you prefer to sightsee? Obviously you would prefer to sightsee places which are famous, which you've never seen before. Correct. So maybe the vacationers have not seen pure aquariums, but they have seen zoos. Maybe they are interested in aquatic animals, over the other animals. And because the zoo aquarium is a smaller in size, modest in scope, maybe they are going to pure aquarium. So any of these can work. Let's go through the options. The question says, which of the following most helps to account for the difference described between the visitors? All right. Why more vacationers at pure aquariums and fewer vacationers at zoos? Okay. In cities that have both a zoo and pure aquarium, local residents, that means we're talking about non-vacationers, are twice as likely to visit the aquarium. They might be likely to visit the aquarium, but actually they're visiting the zoo more, right? So A is out. And it's just talking about what the locals do. It's not telling us why the vacationers are more intent on visiting the pure aquarium. B says virtually all large metropolitan areas have zoos. So there are lots of zoos, whereas only a few large metropolitan areas have pure aquariums. Basically, you're saying pure aquariums are a rarity, zoos are a commonality. So it's like demand and supply. If the supply of something is rare, uh, you would rush to, check it out, right? So B is the correct answer, of course. It tells us why vacationers would rather go to pure aquariums, because they have zoo in their city, but they don't have a pure aquarium. So therefore, they are more intent on going to the pure aquarium. So I'm going to keep B on hold. C says, over the last 10 years, newly constructed pure aquariums have outnumbered newly constructed zoos. See, new aquariums and new zoos will only give me the numbers for the new aquariums and the new zoos. Overall numbers I have only in B. So C is out. Okay. C doesn't include the base numbers. So doesn't explain why more vacationers are flocking to the pure aquariums. People who visit the zoo. Now D is upfront, right away suspect, because which people? The vacationers or the non-vacationers? So D is out because of that. We're not talking about people in general. We need to know the difference. E says the zoo aquariums of zoos that are in the same city as a pure aquarium tend to be smaller. We already know that the zoo aquarium is modest in scope. So this is not really giving me any information. Size is irrelevant, and therefore the correct answer is B. Look, you want this to be crisp. Siddharth, can you see how the word people is a dead giveaway? I want to understand the difference in visitors. So if something is talking about vacationers or if something is talking about non-vacationers or locals, I can still uh, infer something from it. But people, which people? All right. That brings us to the end of this session, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the session, and do keep in mind the things that the processes that we spoke about. Those of you who missed the process, who joined late, do revisit the recording of the webinar. You'll get it on YouTube to understand how to solve the boldface questions, how to solve these paradox questions. Okay, one of my students, he had 3 boldface questions on his exam, and it was something that he was not prepared for. So do not take boldfaces lightly. Do not take paradox lightly. Don't consider them as fringe questions. All right. So yeah, that was from my side, and you have some details on the screen. Once again, if you are facing issues with your prep, all right, either whether you're a retaker or if you are preparing for the first time, but you're facing problems, all right, there's a link that I'm going to put out on the screen. You can fix a free call, free appointment with our strategy experts and talk to them about your issues, and we will help you resolve your issues. So those are some of the credentials there on the screen for you. And once again, I hope you really enjoyed this session, and see you guys around soon. All the very best to all of you out there preparing, working so hard. Don't give up hope. Stay consistent. Stay, let me put it this way, work diligently and consistently. Discipline and consistency, these 2 things. So all the very best for your prep, and a good day to all of you who have just begun your day, and a good night if you're ending your day. Take care. Bye bye.